What's up, guys? Jordan here with the Fitness Business Podcast. Really excited to chat with y'all today. This is part 2 of a 2-part episode where I'm going to give you the blueprint on how we operate our podcast. And this podcast has been a big contributor that's responsible for over $35 million in sales between our 2 fitness companies, T4E Systems and Impact Fitness Coaching Academy. Okay, so on last week's episode, I talked about how my wife and I started this podcast on August 20th of 2018, and we've since recorded 2 episodes a week for 320 weeks, and we've now published over 600 episodes. So I can honestly say that this podcast is a huge reason that our business has been so successful. And so on last episode, what I covered was A, how to decide if and when you should start a podcast. 2, how to create a podcast repurposing machine that will allow you to pump out 20 to 25 pieces of content from just 2 episodes a week and 4 to 6 hours of work. Also covered all the equipment, software, apps that you'll need, both between kind of the cheapest, just getting started versus like, hey, I'm ready to go baller level. But on today's episode, I'm going to continue to show you more tactics. So A, how to structure your episodes, including the outline, the titles, the hooks, how to even use ChatGPT to streamline a lot of this. Then I'll cover how I delegate my tasks so that I just can focus on creating the episodes and everything else is done behind the scenes through utilizing things like Asana, Google Drive, and other systems to create more content from a single episode. Plus, I'll share with you my simple process for launching your podcast and getting the most out of the launch. And then I'm going to wrap it all up with some tips and hacks for more growth, more conversions of listeners into clients, etc. So let's get into it. All right, guys, let's jump into it. First is just Google Drive folders. Very important because you can keep everything organized. And if you're going to pay an editor or a podcast producer and you have a team, you need to have one central location that everything lives. And by doing this, you'll always have the video content, the audio content that you can always have your team go down or go into later to create content from and repurpose from. So for example, we didn't do this for the longest time in terms of like cutting short form content out of existing podcasts, but we went back like after year 3 of our podcast and we had a team go through and scrape all these old folders for content, and it gave us so much good content to then repurpose. So here's how I do it. Basically, let me just open up an episode as an example. You'll see here in the folder, we have audio, we have video, and then we have an outline. Okay, the outline is everything that our editors need. This is a bad example. This is one of Aaron's. Let me go to one of mine. Let's go to how to use math to grow your business. So you'll see here, we have everything in here, including even the reels and short form content that you might want to pull from this, but you'll have title, any links that are necessary, and any notes that you have for your team. So again, just to recap that, you want to make sure to use Google Drive to store all of your content. Now, the next thing that I would recommend is what's called OBS streaming software. That's actually what I'm using right now to share this screen. And what's cool about this, I'll actually just show you. All right, so if you're looking at this, it's kind of like a Inception dream within a dream within a dream, because you're looking at my OBS screening software or streaming software. And now what I can do here is I can turn this off for the video capture display. And so what this allows me to do is to upload footage directly from my streaming software right into my computer. So it's a very efficient tool that you can also like see yourself on screen. You can record it right in here. So there's no more needing to transfer files from SD cards, etc. And all you need to set this up is the OBS software that you can download online. Get a Cam Link connector right here. So you can order this on Amazon. It's called Cam Link. You need a dongle to hook up to your computer, and then you need an HDMI cable. So that's it. The whole setup's maybe like $100, and it is a game changer. Enough of the nerdy stuff. Let's jump over into creating great topics and hooks. So for your podcast, I would focus more on shorter episodes to begin with and try to keep consistency within 5, 10, maybe 15-minute top episodes. The key here is making episodes that focus on solving one key thing. Then as you get more listeners and get more trust, you can start to drip in some longer episodes. So some real simple ways to think about this is like the yay minus boo angle, right? Hey, here's how to tone up without having to give up ice cream, right? Or the truth about X. Hey, here's the truth about losing weight as a mom who also works a career. Or hey, what to do if X? What to do if you've been dieting for months and the scale's not moving? So think of like one topic to focus on instead of trying to create episodes that go too in depth and they're too long. Because I'm telling you, listenership right now, you'll get just way more people to opt in and to listen to your podcast if they're shorter and punctual and focus on one thing. What I like to do as well is to utilize ChatGPT to help me with my content titles. And I'll give you an example here. So today I went into ChatGPT and I literally uploaded my whole outline and I asked it to give me some good titles for this podcast and for my YouTube thumbnails and hooks. And you'll see here, it gave me some really good information. So it gave me a YouTube title, thumbnail ideas, and it gave me suggestions for enhancing the quality of the episode. So you can literally ask ChatGPT to, hey, help me make a better story out of this topic, or give me a parable to emphasize this, etc. Right? So I would really recommend that. Next is R&D. So what you want to do is go and look at top podcasts of people in your niche, and you can just kind of see what they're creating, look at some of their most downloaded episodes or YouTube videos, and start creating content from that. So for example, here we have Mind Pump Media, right? So here are 3 steps to get bigger arms in 30 days. You have the 6 best high protein, inexpensive foods you can get anywhere. What happens to your body when you quit eating ultra processed foods for 30 days? You know, again, like you notice here, they're not focused on a million things. It's just, here's one tip that we can really dive into. When you're structuring your outline, here's the key. I sometimes will sit down and write long form content around a specific topic. Maybe it's a very long post, but then I'll go in and say, okay, this long post can be turned into 4 different podcast ideas. Each of those 4 podcast ideas end up becoming 10 to 15 pieces of content. All right. So let me break down how to structure your actual outline. So there are a few ways you can do this. I like having a title at the very top. So let's just use a fitness example here. Let's say your title is 5 ways for women to unstuck the scale without doing just more cardio, right? And maybe you plug that in and say, hey, let's just do it live. Plug that into ChatGPT and say, hey, give me some, let's say, can you give me 5 better podcast titles for this episode? And then you'll put in the episode and let's see what it pumps out. So instead of how to unstick the scale, yada, yada, it's telling us 1, break the weight loss plateau, 5 smart strategies for women, no extra cardio needed, 5 proven ways to move the scale without more cardio, stuck on the scale, 5 effective solutions for women beyond cardio. So again, that can give you some more ideas and trendy hook formations based on a singular input, which is whatever topic or title you came up with. Okay. So if we keep running down the line, let's look at the outline. Let's go back to this. So what you want to do is then have a hook. So always start with a hook. Okay. So let's say the hook is, hey ladies, if you're listening to this and you're frustrated because the scale isn't moving, even after months of dieting, I'm going to give you 5 reasons this could be happening and what to do to fix it. And then so you go hook and then story. The best way to open any podcast episode is with some sort of a story that either is how you went through this thing, or maybe you just tell a parable or how a client experienced this, right? Because stories stick. Stories make people interested. They convey, they move information, and they make things actually interesting. And so you would just say, hey, and listen, before I jump in, I want to just say that I know how you feel. See, I remember back when I was just starting my fitness journey, and I would, again, you go into it, like I would spend months on, dieting and being dialed in, but then the scale would get stuck and I'd become so frustrated and think that I was a failure. And it wasn't until I realized blank, 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 right? So again, emphasize it with a story. Then all you want to do is have your bullets, your tips, my old English teacher used to call this bing, bang, bongo. So you have your big idea and then a bing, a bang, and a bongo. 3 contributing points to that big idea, right? And so the way you do this is give them the tips, give them the value. Let's say number 1, it's protein, increasing your protein, etc. You want to use belief breaking formula here that'll allow you to explain this in a way that's compelling versus just throwing information at them. So the way you do this is you first state what they believe. So you've probably been led to believe that the only way for you to hit your protein goals is by eating boring crap like chicken and ground beef all day. Well, look, this is wrong because I'm telling you that there are much more satisfying and fun foods that you can incorporate into your diet that actually don't make you hate being on a weight loss goal. And so then you say what they believe, say why it's wrong, say what is right. See, what my clients like to do is incorporate, Greek yogurt and protein shakes and blah, blah, blah. Like give them some tips, say why it's right. And what this does is it makes you not resent the food that you're about to eat. It doesn't make it so that you can't wait to binge on the weekends, and it allows you to hit your protein much easier. And then again, as a bonus here, you can say, and look, this is how my client Tina was able to overcome her plateau on XYZ, right? And you just do that for each of the tips. Maybe tip 2 is around steps and movement. And then maybe tip 3 is around taking more rest days or maybe refeeds. So you can say something along the lines of like, hey, look, you've probably been led to believe that you just need to do more to get more results. Well, what if I told you that most people end up putting more stress on their bodies by trying to do too much? So what you could do to unstick your plateau right now is actually just take a few rest days and maybe even increase your calories for a couple of days. See where I'm going with this? Cool. So what you want to do here is have a good CTA. Hey, if you found this useful, make sure to tag me on Instagram at my handle, share it on your story. The only way that we get this podcast to grow is if you guys share it with your audience or your, people that you care about. And here's what you can do. Here's a really good tip. You can offer an indirect CTA where you tell them, hey, make sure to shoot me a message on Instagram if you want my 5 keys to breaking weight loss plateaus, right? If you have a lead magnet. So this way you're getting listeners to go to your Instagram to get more content from this episode and to allow you to get into a conversation with them. Or you could do a direct call to action that's talking about your coaching. You could say, and listen, if you want to learn more about how we help busy moms lose, to recover their downregulated hormones so they can lose 10, 15, even 20 pounds in 90 days using our mom cortisol reset method. Shoot me a message on Instagram. I'll send you more details on how we've helped 1,000 plus women or 100 plus women get into the best shape of their lives without excess cardio, without feeling like a failure, and without giving up their favorite foods. So that's really an important part of this, is having a system for how you actually create the content. So next, I want to jump into how to delegate post-production. So if you want to find a podcast producer or maybe a content manager or a video editor, I would recommend going to onlinejobs.ph, where you can find really talented individuals in the Philippines and overseas. You can pay $4 to $6 an hour, which is great money there, to basically repurpose and do a lot of this for you. And the way you manage this is inside of Asana. Okay, so Asana is a project management software that allows you to assign tasks and to delegate. So what I do is I create a task. I have a podcast board here that you're looking at, and I have a pipeline for ideas. I have one for ready to record. I have guests that I want to schedule. I have ready to finish and record, ready for publishing. And so I basically just have like each podcast as a task. Then if you open it up, I come in here and I assign subtasks, right? Where I'm like, hey, I want to, where I can put all the information and everything that's needed for the post-production of this. I put notes. I might record a Loom video so that my team knows exactly how to take this content and then go redistribute it across multiple channels. Okay. It's a game changer. Asana is. And then what I do is I have this thing called our content submission doc. So what this is, it's a Google Doc that has a table of contents at the top of it that I come up with content ideas and then I link those in the podcast. So for example, if I create this podcast, I'm probably going to go to my content doc and I'm going to create a promo post from it where I'm going to take 5 keys to launching a podcast, right? I'll create that on the doc. My team takes that, turns it into a carousel post, and then creates a CTA for this podcast on it. And the cool thing is if you do this with the table of content feature, I can come in here and I can literally just copy the link to the post, put it in Asana, and just say, here's a link to my promotional post for this episode. It creates a lot of simplicity. From there, what I'll do oftentimes is once I film an episode, I'll come back to my outline and I'll say, what are maybe 1, 2, or 3 quick reels that I can just film since I'm here, I'm already on this topic, that I can then have a CTA on that reel to, hey, if you want to learn more about how this works, I just recorded a podcast episode on this. Go check it out on the Fitness Business Podcast episode, yada, yada, yada. And then finally, Loom. So Loom is really effective, a screen recording software where you can create clear instructions for your team on how you want the post-production details to go. All right. So I know that's kind of dense for those listening. That might not make sense. I recommend hopping into the YouTube video once it's out. But now I want to cover with you just some more tactics on how to launch your podcast and also how to grow it. So when you're ready to launch your podcast, the biggest thing is naming. Okay. So naming. So the biggest thing when you're getting started here is you want to have a good name for your podcast. And I see so many people make the mistake of creating podcasts with these very vague, not very clear names. I want to suggest that you focus on clear over cute. Now, if you're going to go cute, still do something that's in alignment with your brand. For example, one of our clients, Alicia, her whole brand is around being your own daddy. It's a fat loss, a fitness podcast, but it's also focused on women being bosses. And so that works for her. But the mistake that we made early on, we called our podcast the Flow State of Mind podcast. Look, nobody knows what it means. It's very vague and confusing, but we eventually realized we need a more clear niche with our podcast. That's why we changed the name to the Fitness Business Podcast, because you want people to be able to search and see your podcast pop up and be like, oh, I know exactly what that's about. Women's weight loss over 30 podcast. I know it's kind of boring, but you get the point. Make sure it's clear who it's for and what the avatar and the audience is. Okay. So the number 2, when you're ready to launch, you want to build excitement and really take people behind the scenes of what you're doing to build this podcast, recording the episodes, putting your equipment together, getting everybody excited and building curiosity. And what I would do is number 3, record 10 episodes. So that way you have some content to take people behind the scenes. And then also you have episodes that are batched in case you get busy after you launch, because the last thing you want to do is to launch a podcast, have some listeners, and then you miss an episode and you lose them. Number 4, create a list of everybody that you know who you can ask to help share this podcast the day it goes live. Clients, friends, audience, coworkers, anybody you can think of. And just simply ask them, hey, on this day, I'm launching a podcast. I would love it if you would give it a listen and maybe help share it. And you want to build a lot of excitement around that, because when you hit go, if you get a lot of listeners on that day 1, you can easily rise the ranks to be top 1, 2, 3, 4 in your niche, because a lot of it's based on that initial launch day. And it'll help you to then rise the ranks and be discoverable and then capture new audience members for your podcast. And then finally, just promote the hell out of it, right? Your email list, your text list, your clients, everybody. And a podcast is also a really great way way to keep in touch with your current clients. Your clients will be the ones who listen to this religiously. And it's a great way to continue to keep them motivated, on task, mindset principles, things working today, mistakes to avoid. So not only is this a great tool for content and marketing, it's a really great tool for retention and fulfillment as well. Finally, guys, I'm going to wrap this up with some tricks and tips for growth. So what I've learned is the best way to grow a podcast is with good content, of course, but not getting too focused on just getting more listeners versus getting the right listeners. For example, there was a time when we were getting like 50,000 downloads a month, but it was a much more broad audience that wasn't generating as much revenue. Now we might get 20 to 30,000 listeners a month, but we get more conversions from that because it's a much more niche base. No different than on Instagram or an email list. I'd rather have an email list of 2,000 subscribers that are engaged and niched than I would a 50,000 email list that like never is going to buy my stuff. And the easiest way to grow a podcast, guys, is with ads. So what we do is our podcast is a big part of our middle of funnel. I talked about this on the prior episode, but anytime somebody opts into an ad, our email and text hit them with podcasts. It sends them to our content, which have more podcasts. I'm trying to drive all new leads as much as I can into our podcast. The same with our Instagram, etc. Number two, you can start to create a bank, like a spreadsheet with common problems that your ideal clients face. And then your sales team or you can use these as nurture assets, right? So you're in a conversation with someone, they're struggling with XYZ. Oh, hey, check out this podcast. I really think it would help you because you mentioned you're struggling with XYZ. Here's a quick 10-minute episode. Boom. Because what that does, now they listen to one episode, that lead is going to go down the rabbit hole and listen to more. And the more they listen, the more nurtured they are. Number three, midpoint ads and giveaways. So what you want to do is every couple of months, film 30-second quick midpoint ads. Okay. So maybe you have one for your lead magnet, one for maybe a Facebook group, one for maybe your core offer, and then make them short, make them punctual, and they just interrupt the episode real quick. And they say, for example, hey, if you found this useful, as you know, we don't run ads on this podcast, but the main way that we're able to reach new people is by you sharing this. Okay. Any way that you can share, that might be on your social media, maybe you text it with a friend. But what that does is it allows me to reach more people and to impact more lives. And so what I ask is if you found any amount of value from this podcast, all I ask is for you to share with a friend. Okay. It would mean so much to me if you do. Oh, and by the way, for every time you share this, if you tag us on Instagram and tag us at Impact Fitness Coaching Academy, do a giveaway, $100 Amazon giveaway. So we choose one person who shares every month and give them a $100 Amazon giveaway. And here's the cool thing. We only usually get maybe 10 of these a month who actually tag us. So your chances of winning are really high. See what I did there? Which that's all true. And we do that and it works and it incentivizes them. You end up creating, a giveaway almost. Cool. The number 5 thing is 2 steps on episodes. So I showed you the example in the outline, but once you finish an episode, and if you have like a lead magnet or a resource or something else to give them, you can pitch that at the end. Hey, by the way, if you want a checklist that covers what I talked about today, so you have a little cheat sheet to keep with you so you know what to choose when eating out on the road, shoot me a message on Instagram that says fast food cheat sheet or whatever, right? So that's going to take listeners over to your social media into a conversation. Number 6, at least 1 to 2 times a month, I would have an episode where you pitch your program. You make a direct offer. You talk about it, the benefits, the promise, the details, and have a call to action to DM you to learn more. You could do that in the form of like just an episode that talks about your program or a client interview, which at the end of the interview, you pitch your program, etc. And the final thing is just cross-pollinating. This used to work more than it does nowadays, but it's still important, which is, reaching out to people in your niche or who also have podcasts of similar size and just saying, hey, I would love to collaborate with you. I'd love to invite you on my show. I'll come on yours. Let's see if we can add value to each other's audiences. And that way you'll have listeners who are in person A's audience who align with you more and some of theirs will align with them, right? It's a great way to collaborate without needing to be competitive, right? So that's it, guys. This one ran a little bit longer than I'd expected, but there was a lot to cover and hopefully you found this useful. I would love to say, hey, I have a resource and a checklist to send you, but I'll be honest, I don't. So maybe next time. But anyways, guys, thanks for listening and see you on the next